With the rising prices of phones, I thought we would take a look back at this guy to see whether or not it is still worth it and if it even compares to the phones of today. I'll be talking about cover, compromise, cost, and competition, so skip to the parts that interest you the most. First things first is cover. Does it cover the basics? And a basic feature that a phone should really nail is the form factor, the build and the body, and that is something that this phone still today, in my opinion, does. It is really well built, and this design in general just stands the test of time. It's the same form factor as the iPhone SE 2020, which wasn't even released that long ago, which just goes to show you the great form factor, especially if you really like this smaller version and are not really into the bigger phones. Something else that this is really great for is if you have older accessories and you don't really want to buy the new ones and you just want to keep your older ones, phone cases, chargers, really anything, this guy will definitely do it, especially because of that headphone jack as well. You won't have to buy any of the new expensive accessories, you can just stick to your old ones. Next up, can this even accomplish simple tasks? And it's important to mention that based on the OS and the RAM in this guy, and even depending on if you get the cheapest model, you'll even be limited by the storage. So there's gonna be a lot of different limits that come to using this device. But as a high school student, using it throughout my day-to-day for entire school days, for both school apps and social apps, there was nothing that I really felt like I was missing out on. Something else that's pretty cool about this device is that it can even run Minecraft and PUBG, which really just says a lot about how this phone holds up today. And yes, while it can in fact do most things, it doesn't exactly mean that it does them well, which brings me on to number 2, the compromise. Frustrations versus pleasures. Let's give this device the benefit of the doubt. I mean, it is 6 years old, so let's start off with the pleasures. Like I mentioned before, it has a really good design, build, and screen, which really holds up today for any basic tasks. It has an okay camera if you aren't too picky about photos and just want something that's gonna get the job done. It's also gonna have an okay battery life depending on how old it is, and if your battery health is lower than, I would say, 80%, you may notice that it degrades pretty quick over time. Now for the frustrations with this phone, and first things first has gotta be the speed. Only on the native Apple apps, and sometimes at that, is this phone really quick or snappy, or even okay in its speed. The rest of the time, it's generally gonna be pretty slow with the A8 processor, especially in downloaded apps, such as games, such as anything that you can get off the App Store. This device is just gonna be really, really slow, and you're gonna notice that as soon as you start using a device like this. Also, like I mentioned, the battery degrades pretty quickly over time, and it's even worse if you're starting off with that less than 100% battery health. And if you're on a really tight budget, then the cheapest models of these phones only have 16 gigabytes of built-in storage, which if you do some tricks and hacks like I did when I was using this phone, then maybe it'll get you by, but really in 2020, it's just not enough. Also, no water resistance certification with this device. And finally, and maybe the biggest frustration with this device, is that there's no iOS 13 support, which brings me on to my next point, coverage. Will this phone last for years to come? And that's an interesting question, because the answer is no. Kinda. There is only 1 gigabyte of RAM, meaning that 1, it's gonna be extremely slow, and 2, there's not gonna be any future software support. And the reason that I said kinda is because this phone is actually still receiving updates. Even though it's not gonna have iOS 13, it's actually still receiving updates from Apple. The latest update that it got was iOS 12.4.7, which was only a few days ago. Just going to show you that Apple is still updating its older devices to keep them optimized. So from the limited internals that it has, it's pretty safe to say that it might get a couple minor fixes from Apple, but in general, no future support with this device. Number 4, cost. Is this budget friendly? And with the price with this phone, it's actually pretty insane. This device is far under $100, near $70 at the low end. Considering that this device can actually cover most of your basics, $70 isn't even that bad. But with number 5 being competition, and if you can get something better at the price, if you're willing to step up to around the $100 price points, then the iPhone 6s is actually a much better option. It is going to be way faster with that extra gigabyte of RAM. It's also going to be supportive of iOS 13 and 14, and it actually rivals the specs of the iPhone 7, and from a spec point of view, it actually is almost the same. So in conclusion, this phone, it isn't gonna blow your mind. If you're somebody that just wants to send a few texts, play a few games, make a few calls, check social media even, then this phone does actually cover your basics okay. What this device really could work as is kind of like a no worries device, where the person who is going to be really using this, it's going to be their first device, or maybe they're just getting into the ecosystem, and the compromises that you're going to find on this device is going to be for somebody that is a little bit more of a heavy phone user, rather than a casual user that just wants something that is budget friendly. As soon as you want to have lots of apps, take really nice and a lot of photos, use this device for many years to come, then this device just may not be worth it. Because of how slow it is, the fact that it's not even supported by Apple anymore in terms of the new improved software, of course, and at this price point, there's just a much better option with the iPhone 6s that just offers that little bit more that makes it feel not as outdated. This is things like feature support and speed that the iPhone 6 just lacks. But don't get me wrong, for your everyday, simple tasks, this phone does actually give a lot of value for the price. And just like the iPhone 6 could provide you a lot of value, if this video has provided you any value, it would really help my channel if you left a like and even subscribed if you want more videos just like this one. More videos are on the way, so hit the bell icon if you don't want to miss them. I'm Matt, and thanks for watching.